So, Colleen, would you mind taking notes again for us today?
No problem.
Thank you. I'll just go ahead and ask that the three of us, vote on whether or not we approve those meeting minutes from, I believe it was March 21st. Any opposed to those notes? Oh, good. So raise your hand if they're fine out of
Well,
Catherine.
I mean, if we'd like a little drama, if you want a little drama, I'll say no.
But then you got to tell us why.
I'm too tired to. I'm too tired to figure out a reason why, so I'll go yes.
Oh, well, then that doesn't that count.
Okay.
But we do love drama, so
Okay.
you know.
I'll be better prepared next time. Yeah.
And for everybody, I send them out usually soon after. So anything, people read through them, and usually we find out pretty soon after that either something's incorrect or whatever. So I don't think I remember having to change anything, so it should be still the same.
And yeah, today should be pretty straightforward. Thank you guys for doing that. So in case, I just want to make sure everybody's sort of up to date on exactly sort of why we had to have this meeting. It's the responsibility of our committee to check with the town to basically ask everyone in town what they think our priorities should be. So we are not just making these decisions when the grant requests come in according to our own ideas of what the town needs, but the town's ideas. And so the last time we did this was in 2018, and we sort of had a meeting similar to this, except in person, and discussed different questions we have when these applications come in. And then we made a survey that we put at the library, we put in the item, and we put on the various Facebook, like I guess our page, and then we shared that page to the different community groups. And I think we did it through SurveyMonkey. And then we had someone on the committee at the time who was able to work with SurveyMonkey and was able to just take those results. We had another meeting and we just looked at the numbers to see what people said and wrote the priorities. And so I can share with everybody what that first survey looked like. I think you saw I had a picture that someone saved the paper copy. For some reason I couldn't find the original file, but someone saved the paper copy. So I have a photograph of that I'll screen share just so that we can look at that together. One second here. And there, can you see that? That photo show? Okay.
Yep.
So we wanted to make sure, obviously, that people are Wakefield residents. And the questions we have, lots of these are open-ended, and then two are, pick any and all that apply. And so I thought, we could start with these, but we're not tied to any of these questions. If you have better ideas about wording, times might be a little bit different. If there's other questions that you think we might have, we can add those in. Probably trying to keep a one-page survey is a good idea, so that we can make sure like the library doesn't have to do anything, and that we keep it simple. So are there any questions as you're reading through these? Are there any questions that come up?
Not a question, Caroline, but I think I remember when we did this the last time, something we might want to add is we got a lot of responses that said, what were the programs? And so maybe even if people attended them, they might not have known or remembered that the Cultural Council / Now, Arts Council was partially funding it, so maybe we want to have like a list preemptive or attached somehow.
I think that's a great idea. Maybe even a checklist. Which of these cultural council events did you attend or did you know about? I think that would be great. And we have a better idea of, yeah, and it gives a little bit of information in case people didn't realize that's what it was. I keep saying cultural council, I kept to say arts council, right? We changed our name. So yes, so that's definitely, we'll want to add that question in. I think that's great. Any other observations or questions?
Just a question about the people taking the survey in the library. Would that be paper or would they be sent to a computer
I think that was paper and
to
Sarah.
do Survey Monkey?
Yeah, Sarah dropped them off and picked them back up again. I don't think we got that many that way, but so we had to, when we got the Survey Monkey, we then had to
Okay,
have those paper forms to,
you had to add those. Okay, okay. Mhm.
Caroline, I was wondering if there was anything that came back from the 2018 surveys that maybe, might, I wonder if there's any way to like look back at those responses and maybe include some like common population segments or things like that that maybe weren't addressed the first time.
that's a great question. I think I found the file folder that I threw it all into. I just have to see if I can find it again. And priorities file. So these are not, I'm not sure that I have the ability to open them. They're in a file and they are they're a file, they're a XM. I don't like, I threw them in a folder and I don't have, but I do live with IT help. So I will get him to see if he can help me figure out what was in these files, because they may be the original Survey Monkey files that I just don't have the specific app to open at the moment. So yeah, Colleen, if you'd put that on a to-do list for me, I will see what I can do about accessing that. And yeah, thank you, Ira.
Mhm.
So yeah, any other thoughts that come up as you're looking at this?
Number 4,
Uh-huh.
I'd like to add a checkbox for creating arts-based events in Wakefield for people to attend.
Great. That's right along the mission, I think, of what lots of people are wanting to continue doing with our.
Mhm. Being able to see the results of some of these things.
Right. Another question that winds up coming up when we start to look at the groups that apply for grants, there's almost like two categories sometimes. There are groups that apply like every single year. Some of them, it seems, almost rely a little bit on the grants each year for their for some of the work that they're doing. And so I think we've asked ourselves, but we didn't have it on this priority list, so we couldn't use it in any way. Does the community want us to have a cap on how many years one organization can get money? I don't know the best wording for that, or if it's something we want to put on there, but it does come up as we're pondering, oh, look, this group has, gotten a grant for the past 7 years. Is it someone else's turn? Um, so, I'm open to ideas about how to word that or anything, but I think it might be a question to ask the community.
I'm really not sure if that's something we would want to ask the community, because I could imagine people who really don't have much relationship to the arts, who don't have an understanding of of the various needs and the contributions, just sort of saying, oh no, you shouldn't be able to have more than 2 or 3 years at a time. If I remember correctly, in discussions, the first year I was only listening in on the discussion because I wasn't officially a part of the committee yet. And last year, I mean, I remember we took that into consideration. So I don't know how others feel, but I'd want to think twice about putting that on a community survey.
I can see what you mean, especially because, there's always PTO or school organizations that are requesting funding to take students to certain performers or bring performers in. And that is a different group every single year because the kids are going to another school. So
Yeah,
I can I can imagine how a limiting question could inadvertently limit an organization that's literally serving different children every year. Um, so
And I agree too
Yeah,
with Kathleen.
yeah.
I think that maybe there's a separate set of questions we have sort of in-house for ourselves that we decide on as criteria for deciding grants, which I know we've had those
Yeah.
discussions before. And then this is sort of just the forward-facing programming specific ones, but that's a good discussion to have for in-house, I think, on our committee and when we're deciding the grant next year.
okay. Another question that may not be on the survey but could be possibly worded on the priorities is one of the things that came up last year when it's come up a few years. Do we want to make sure that grant applicants have their venue already set up and approved? And I think it's not explicitly on our priorities, but it's sometimes one of the reasons we don't feel comfortable giving a grant is because it's left so up in the air about where and when they might have it. They just want, they want the money first and then they hope that they'll find a location. And I think we've sort of, like this past year especially, we were much more due to COVID, we said, you've got to give us your plan of how you're going to reach the community. And so, yeah, it may not be something we ask on the priority survey, but maybe something that we could, like, for instance, if someone wants to do a lecture at the library, they are much more likely to get approval if they've gotten a letter from the library saying, yes, we would host them here, at this date, so that we know that this discussions are already happening.
I agree that's important. I do agree also that that's probably not for the survey, but probably in that same category as the last one. That's a good point.
Any other thoughts or additions to ideas on the survey? With the open-ended questions, especially like number 6, do we need to discuss whether or not it's too open-ended? Do you think there is such thing as too open-ended, or is it good to get as much of people's written feedback as possible?
Well, I'm assuming number 3 might actually end up being the checklist of past programs. So that means there's probably going to be less open-ended questions. I feel like having number 6 just be one, the big open-ended question is not that big a deal.
Any other discussions?
Yeah, I
with
agree. I agree. I feel like last time going through this, we got some good feedback. It wasn't overwhelming. And maybe that will help us to gear our questionnaire the next time better. And that goes to Ira's point too. If we can find those last group of responses, we might see something in there that will inform us to add a different question this time or something. So, but I guess I wish our problem was we got too many responses. Unfortunately, that's not usually the case. So I do think a good open-ended one is always a good thing for people to sort of tell us
Yeah.
something on their mind.
I don't think it hurts to have an open-ended question like this, but it is asking for two different things, and maybe we would want to focus it down. Either we're asking what types of programming or what feedback they would want to share. I think we'd probably get better responses if it was one or the other, or we had two questions.
That's a really good point. So if we were to choose one of the two, either what would you like more, what would you like to see more, or what feedback do we have? What information do we feel is most valuable?
Hmm.
Well,
I
one
think what
thing you could
feedback-
do conceivably is incorporate or integrate the first part of that question about types of programming into question 3. What have you been aware of, and what other types of programs might you want us to support? Then we could leave number 6 as the open-ended one. What other feedback would you want to share, etc.? The possibility.
Yeah, I like that. And then as far as what other types of programming, would we leave that with number 3, would we leave it open, or would we have checkboxes to have, such as this, that, or the other?
I think you're running into the one-page problem if we do another checkbox.
Right.
But
there is an option if we did. I'm not sure when we did this last. Sometimes they limit you to one type of response per question. So
Yeah.
we might need to make it a separate question, but we can put it, like Kathy's saying, right after that one, and it can be just like one sentence instead of, they usually have like multiple choice, toggle, one sentence, or like paragraph format.
Okay.
That'll help.
So then I guess for that question 3, we sort of need to go back and look at the past 2 years, which is really tricky with COVID, and the projects that have actually happened, and see and come up with that list. I can probably, since I downloaded all of those files and everything. Oh, and I've got the spreadsheet, so I can do that. I can come up with a list of the different projects in town. But what other, like if we were going to put some other, what more would you like to see? What different categories can we imagine people might be interested in? Anybody? The different projects that have happened, most of them have been school. I think most of them have been, a great majority of them have sort of been drama related. We also had the dancing with seniors. We've had the art exhibits. We had the Boys and Girls Club, did the wicker chairs, so there's different visual arts things that have happened and drama, and I'm trying to think what category. Oh, the music. There's quite a few different musical things that have happened as well that ranging from Linden Tree Coffee Shop, Linden Tree to the Instrument Petting Zoo for Kids that one group does.
So Caroline, I have a quick, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just, I'm trying to get a sense of what we're hoping to learn with this question. Is it kind of awareness of the work that the council has done in the past, or?
So I think initially when we were talking about question 3, yes, we want to list those things that we hope people to see if people were aware of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also that generates a little bit of awareness that, oh, these did happen, by the way, you know. And then I guess the second part we were trying to figure out is if we would have a way of incorporating, you know, what other programming would you like to see? But it may not be an easy thing, as I'm saying it out loud, to, if we're keeping one format, to have that one question cover both of those.
So Caroline, I'm also just sort of thinking at the same time, and I probably should have been thinking before the meeting, but I'm not. I didn't. But I just realized the one thing we have an advantage over this time is the last time we did the survey, we didn't actually have any priorities to grow from. So, and sorry, that just made my brain go, woo, wait a minute. So we actually have that list of priorities that we now have. So we might want to, and maybe this is one of those, like, let's float the document and have people respond, you know, to it sort of offline. But maybe part of this needs to be, if kind of like, if our goal, if we have 2 goals, one is to find out if people like what they're getting, but also if they agree with the priorities they allegedly came up with last time. Maybe, so we're sort of consolidating what we gleaned from the last survey and handing it back to them and saying, do you, you know, check off the priorities you feel strongest, you know, the top 3 or something like that, or that already exist, and somehow have them responding to that. Sorry, that just didn't occur to me till now.
Yeah. Do you want me? I can switch to the council priorities on my screen if you want to take a look at that and see if that sparks any ideas. Let me see if I do that. Can you guys see the priorities now?
Still looking at the survey.
Still looking at the survey. Okay. Let me stop share and. You have it now?
No. Mm-hmm.
Yay.
So one of the
So I guess part of my,
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say one of the things that
I was just going to Jinx Flash 10 over.
One of
Caroline,
the things,
sorry.
Okay, one of the things that comes up when we are specifically rejecting applications is that we have to say why. And that's why the priorities wind up being important, because we have to say, like, which of the priorities this grant doesn't adhere to. And we have, sometimes it can be a generic response, but it's better, like we usually will say something about how the applicants must adhere to the LCC program guidelines, because there's nothing on here that I mean, most of the applicants are with these first 3. That's their, most of them are accessible. Most of them promote some sort of diversity, and they're innovative. I mean, and those are really broad priorities. So that has become a time when I've been going through and trying to figure out how to respond to these appropriately. That's been a a place where I wished we were a little more specific so that I could be more specific. That being said, no one has ever come back and challenged that their project really did adhere to our priorities and should have been reconsidered. So when looking at these, do you what are everybody's thoughts basically?
Can I ask a question separate from that?
Yeah.
So there are applicants, grant applicants who get turned down here?
Yep.
And what percentage gets approved and what percentage gets turned down?
It's different every year. And it depends a lot on how many applicants there are, how much funding we have. We try to basically we try to give as much funding to as many different projects as we can. And that's another thing that some people put on their priorities. Would you rather that we fully fund more projects? I mean, fully fund projects, which means less people get funding. I've seen that on some towns' priorities, you know, that they give preference to either they'll say, you know, your project should be able to take place without being fully funded because we will disperse our funds to as many different projects as possible.
I like Colleen's suggestion that these factors somehow in the report in the survey. I'm kind of grasping at how that would happen succinctly, but it does feel like a good way to approach it.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts, Colleen, as you were looking at these and thinking about the two ideas?
Yeah, I forgot how broad these were. uh, so even though, I mean, and honestly, my memory is terrible for remembering specifically what feedback we got. You know, I guess maybe we could ask people, do they understand, like, for instance, programs that are innovative, do people, like, what do people think that means? You know, like, does it mean it's like new sciencey? Does it mean it hasn't been done before? I don't, I don't know. I'm not really any help besides coming up with ideas that I can't back up. But yeah, so I don't know if somehow we can incorporate these, but they are really pretty broad. I mean, I guess it goes to your point, Caroline, in terms of making them aware of our programming and also our priorities. I guess we should, since or maybe we want to decide, is this two different surveys at two different times? I don't know. And you know, other people, Diana, you know, Laurie and Stephanie, you know, I talk a lot, so please don't let that shut you off. So, you know, tell us what you're thinking too.
I was actually thinking that shouldn't it be a little broad to get more people to apply? So I was thinking that it was a good thing.
I think that must have been our thinking at the time, that we did not want to have any priorities that would limit limit any projects, for sure.
Diana, you look like you're working your brain there. Let us know
I
what's
mean,
going on.
I was trying to think, it's like, say, like, we get like 50 applicants and they all fit the profile. I mean, like, is there like a secondary tier of like, okay, they all fit this profile, they're all great, then this is the next set of criteria that we go to.
Yeah, and I think when we have those voting meetings, when we get the applications, that's when we just start discussing. I'm trying to think of this, like then it becomes like more subjective, so people come in having looked at the applications and they have their subjective ideas about how something is accessible, right? So
Yeah.
that's one that I think out of all of them is probably the one we can point to most as something that's important, right? Because we need to make sure that anyone for whom a project is supposed to be able to serve is actually able to participate. So it has to be an event that has, handicap accessibility. It has to have, it can't be exclusive unless it's like at a school that opposed, that the PTO has arranged or something like that. So, but for instance, anything at the library, anything at any of the churches that are in town has to be open to everybody. I'm trying to think. Oh, the senior center.
So my point being is like, is there like in the case that an application is rejected but meets all of these initial criteria, but we still have to give a reason, is there a list of like secondary criteria that's in their grant application that we can speak to when they receive that rejection?
Yes.
Well, but also, these are priorities, and it's conceivable that every one of the applications, at least on a minimal level, fulfills these priorities.
Right.
But at that point, the extent to which different applicants fulfill these priorities, that weighs in. And I would think that, we've probably all got those rejection letters for either a job or an article that we might have submitted or something that says, you meet the criteria, but we had so many applicants and there were simply some that met it better. So I'm not as concerned about that.
I think what my question
but
is
I
basically
do
is like, what's
think
the difference
that
between priorities and the criteria?
yeah.
Like how much detail do we need to put in the priorities as opposed to the criteria?
I think that's why we left it broad, unfortunately, because you can't necessarily anticipate if we have, like Caroline said, 4 PTO programs and 1 senior programming. It sort of stands out like, yes, we want to fund that senior programming because that's the only one. That's the only one under that category.
Right.
And we might box, I think you said it, Diana, we might box ourselves in if it's too specific. I had an idea, now I forgot it.
I think because I'm new, I just kind of came around the long way to saying I kind of prefer it to be broad too, but at the same time, like maybe there's some criteria that I don't know about that's happened in the past that might need to be included in here.
I think that what winds up happening usually is that when we all come together, having looked at all of these, we've sort of have our, we know the big priorities, and we have like the other criteria that we then discuss.
Uh-huh.
Not something that winds up being written down, but we discuss and debate a little bit on whether or not that criteria is something that is within the guidelines or not, that the greater LCC program guidelines.
Okay.
An example of that, when I think, Colleen, this might have been your first year, I think it was Sarah's first year, we had a discussion about whether it was okay to fund programs that were going to take place in a church.
Hmm.
And we had to go and consult with the LCC program guidelines to basically say, yes, as long as everyone is welcome into the church, it is not seen as promoting that church, over other churches in town or anything like that. That it's just a venue.
Mhm.
But that was one where we just brought it together to have a discussion about that as a criteria, whether or not it should be a.
Yeah,
Okay.
and oh, sorry, and I was just going to add that sort of I feel like the two are the written ones are the priorities and the spoken ones are the criteria. And we did a couple of years ago an info session, and we're trying to be more out in the community as a council. And so that probably for you, Diana, that's probably more the venue where we want people to succeed in their applications, and that's a great opportunity for them to come and talk to us, and those are things that we can discuss that sort of go through our minds as a council, but we're not going to write them down because they could change, like Caroline said, different discussions happen, and there's nuanced answers to it, I guess. But I think that's a good point, that there is a they do distinguish themselves, but I feel like maybe if we think of it in terms of the written ones and the spoken ones,
Right.
it's not things we don't want to share. It's just things we don't want to limit us, I guess.
Yeah. No, it's what's the proper forum for each? And I mean, I think that for the priorities, I think this is fine.
I think the one thing I would somehow try to add is that a venue has been secured in some way, shape, or form, because that's where I know there was a group or a man that applied many years in a row, for instance, who what he wanted to do was just have a gig. He had his music prepared. He wanted to come and get paid a certain amount of money to perform Beatles music somewhere for somebody. But that was about as specific as it got. And so we had to say, that's where we were like looking at our priorities going, well, ideally it would be accessible and serve broad, segments. Maybe it would promote diversity. We don't know. Don't know how innovative it is, but you don't have a place to do this. And we can't give you money when you don't have enough of a plan, so that's where, and I think we pointed to the LCC program guidelines, which were able to say you need to have a little bit more information with your application. So it was, somehow it would be good to have wording about if you need a separate venue, a letter from the venue would be appreciated, or something like that. Not required, but it certainly would go a long way to supporting your application if you had a letter.
It should be included.
I agree with that, Caroline. And I know Melrose has something along those lines, although they're a lot stricter, I believe. But so we might want to look at what they have. I guess my other question, because you know this better than anybody, is how are we allowed to come upon our priorities? Like, do we have to have, we know that should be a priority. Are we allowed to just come up with that as a council, or do we have to actually have it sort of input from the public that wouldn't necessarily know that's a problem?
I think that our survey goes to help us with the priorities, but I think that we can determine, like, something like that we can put out there, because for something that's not up for debate, like, we need to have enough information so we don't waste town money,
Right.
like,
Okay. Yeah.
So
And I do
Caroline,
think that goes back to Diana's distinction between the, excuse me, this quick, between
sure.
priorities and criteria. Criteria, it has to be a complete application. And part of that complete application means that you've got to have a venue.
In Caroline, you may have explained this before in email or another format. The purpose of the survey is to expand the priorities, refine the priorities, inform any changes to the priorities?
I think that the survey's purpose is to get input from the community about our priorities. And I think from that, we can take that in any direction we need if we want to use it to expand or to change them in any way. It's just one of those check boxes that all the cultural councils need to do. They have to consult their community with a survey to get input about priorities.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right. I found, why reinvent the wheel, right? I found the thing from Melrose. I just don't see where the chat is. Do we have a chat here?
Or do you want me to give you screen sharing?
I can just read it.
Okay.
Where is it? It says priority is given to applications from Melrose organizations, individuals, and organizers. I don't know if that's exactly, but maybe if we phrased it like priority is given to blah, blah, blah.
So that's really interesting, because many of the groups that come in are not Wakefield groups. Like, we give tickets to Stoneham Theater. They always have like discounted tickets for seniors and students that we help with. So anyway, it's interesting that they have that as a priority.
And I swear, I don't see it here, but I swear on the actual application there's something about it, but maybe it changed, I don't know. But I swear that they actually, and maybe it was just talking to them or something. I don't know how I found it out, but they were basically saying you really need to have a venue in Melrose and a date. And basically the date sort of proves that you have a venue, because, so I don't know if that's something we can consider or not. But again, it's not on their priorities, so I don't know if like we're saying, the priorities are one thing, and then I don't know if there's criteria written somewhere else. I'm not totally sure.
So to move forward, I guess I would propose that we, send out the survey with that question 3 and 6 amended somehow. I can, like I said, I can pull together a list of some of the things that have, been done in the past 2 years. And then probably in our next meeting, we can go over those results and see if it looks like any of our priorities should be changed in any substantial way or not. And that just has to be done by August 31st. That, I think that the application opens on September 1st. So our priorities have to be available for people to see by August 31st. Does that sound like a workable plan?
Yeah. What can I help with, Caroline?
So here's the big question. Does
Hmm.
anybody do SurveyMonkey?
I have,
You have?
yes, good amount.
Oh, that would be so incredibly helpful. So,
Okay.
yeah, so what we'll do is I'll pull together that list of that we can add to question 3, and then we'll need to obviously retype this anyway. And then I think, yeah, if we can have the SurveyMonkey and have a link to it, I will send that to Sarah, who's not here, but she does lots of work with our Facebook page. And then I think her daughter works at the library, volunteers at the library, or works at the library. So I think we can probably cover the paper version and the online version with that. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, that would be really helpful.
Sure.
And Caroline, could you send the link to that lady McDonald? Just because I'm sure I'm the only one on the face of the earth, but I'm not on Facebook. And so anyone who might not be on Facebook wouldn't have access to the survey.
Yes.
But maybe if she can put it on our our town site too.
That is great. Yes. So a SurveyMonkey will have like a link that people can follow to take it, right?
Yep.
So we can, yes, we will have that on our town site, and we can, if anybody has local email lists that they send blasts to or anything that they know are Wakefield residents, or mostly Wakefield residents, you're welcome to send. I mean, we basically want to get it out as much as possible to just validate, that people know that the programming exists, and B, that they feel they've had an input.
And does somebody want to do like a super quick press release? They can send it to the papers and put it in the patch. Anyone?
I could do a stab at it.
Okay, thanks, Diana.
I just realized that Jamie's not here, who often helps you with those press releases, but that would be great, Diana, if you would do that. Colleen, do you have the different email addresses and contacts that you usually send those to?
Yep, I can send those. Either Diana, if you want to send it to me, I'll send it, or I can give you the email.
Okay, either or.
Great. So, all right. So basically, the action items are fixing up this survey and doing the press release and getting those links ready to send to the different places. Am I forgetting anything? Any other action items? Do you want to do
Caroline, Caroline, just a logistical thing. Do you want me to type up the existing survey so we've got it in a Word doc
that would be really
that
helpful.
we can work with? Because right now all you've got is the JPEG, right? Yeah.
Kathleen,
Okay, I can, I'm pretty open tomorrow, so. Yeah, that's brainless, and I spent the day with a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old, so I'm only pretty much good for brainless things right now.
that would be
I'll
that would
do
be
it.
great. All right, thank you.
And Caroline, do you have a deadline you want us to, if anyone has feedback on the questions or anything, to get them to you and Ira by? Or is there feedback, or are we doing that? I don't know. Like a draft? Like who's actually drafting, or Ira, you're doing that, right?
SurveyMonkey piece? Yes.
Yeah.
Well, if you want, I can type this up. And Caroline, if you send me a list of some of the programs that have been done, what I could do is take a stab at drafting the new survey, because you're gonna need that text anyway, Ira, right?
Yeah, I
And then
will.
you can input it into the Survey Monkey.
Hmm.
And I could probably, I can get just the type up done tomorrow, and then, what's today? Today's when? No,
Tuesday.
today's Tuesday.
Just
Oh,
doing-
yeah. And if you get that list, I could probably take care of that tomorrow afternoon or Wednesday and then ship it. Well, I'll share it with everybody, and then Ira, you could use that once people respond, right?
Yeah, that'd be perfect, Kathleen. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great.
Thank you.
So then we can, when should we have a meeting to discuss the survey results? Let's see, because it's gonna,
Now, does the survey have to be done before August 31st, or is that just our
from the survey,
priorities?
from the survey is how we then vote on the priorities. So we'll get the survey
Okay.
result.
So we do, so that,
So, and it may.
so this is a
it
quick turnover.
may-
Yeah,
Right. So, I mean, I suppose if we vote on them on the 30th, I can put them online by the 31st. If we feel like that gives plenty of time to, say if we are able to have them out for have that survey out for a couple of weeks.
Mhm.
Would, in general, I'm sort of assuming that weeknight evenings are better for people, but that's a total assumption. I don't know, rather than weekends or during the work day. Is that a safe assumption?
Yep.
Do you want me to send a doodle out with a couple of different options, or should we vote on a next meeting now? Or propose a next meeting now? Who says doodle? Anybody? Doodle?
I'm going to be on vacation, so
So
I
am
will-
I.
On the 30th, you mean?
I'll have access to,
oh, is it the 30th?
I'm away the last 2 weeks of the summer, but we have internet, so I'd be able to meet.
I
As
should
long
be
as I
back
don't
by the
forget.
30th. If it's the 30th, I should be able to make it.
I wish it was one of those things that we didn't have to have a voting meeting on, but we do.
Yeah.
Okay.
So do you want to just take a quick survey of people available on August 30th?
Right. Who's available on August 30th at like 7 p.m.?
as long as it's quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry to be thrown. I may have a wrench, but I'm not sure. I'm starting a new job that day, so it's a little bit of a wild card for me.
Oh,
Thanks.
Lord.
Is later better for anyone, or does that make it worse?
Worse.
that might. It's just such a wild card. I'm just really not sure. So hard to plan for the 30th for me right now.
All right. I will then maybe I might still just send a doodle so I can make sure to get to Jamie and
Yeah.
see what numbers we have, just so we can make sure to have a quorum for that. I'll touch base with you to get those like survey results to close the survey. Why don't we tentatively say that we close the survey even by maybe by the 25th or something, just to make sure we have enough time there to pull together the data and some flexibility. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
All right. Great. So I'll send a doodle out with, a couple of possibilities just in case. And yeah, otherwise we'll have all of the back and forth with the new survey. Okay?
I may email with, just to get some bullet points as to what we need in the press release and timing on it.
Beautiful. All right.
Short and sweet.
Oh, absolutely.
And just for the record, we don't usually have this many meetings.
Right. I mean, I
So
think
don't be scared.
right. I think you'll agree. This is like it's once every 3 years that we have a full year meetings when we have to do this. And then it's pretty and then it depends on actually how many community event, if we start to want to do more community events, it requires more meetings, but that's, not a bad thing if we're doing some fun things. All right. Then I will go ahead unless anyone has any other comments or questions. Then I will adjourn the meeting, and you guys have a wonderful few weeks. We'll meet again.
All right. Thanks.